Thanks. Appreciate it. And just as Terry's saying, if you have any questions, just send it over chat, and then I'll call on Terry when I see it, so that I'll see that there'll be a message there, and I'll ask her to go through that. So got a couple of things, and I'll move pretty quick here. There's a lot of stuff to go through that I think is fun. But first thing I want to talk about is we're dealing with this COVID, and as we're just talking about, there's been a lot of external challenges in the world. And for me, coming from Australia, it started for me 12 months ago. My home country was on fire for 4 months, and we lost a lot of wildlife and whatnot back there. And then we've just dealt with a lot. That's the external environment. So I'm going to screen share here and show you this. And there's really 3 ways we exist. You've probably seen me do this before. And this is how Sigmund Freud drew the brain. So it doesn't look like this, but we still stick with this. The conscious mind is the top 10%, and that's really the high road. And then the subconscious, all our memories are stored in the subconscious. So this is our thoughts. The subconscious controls our behavior. And the third part is the environment. And so there's really 3 levels. There's the mind. What the research has been proven is we can only have 3 levels. The first level is self-mastery, meaning that's one-dimensional. That's just us. The responsibility is just for us. Then the environmental level is 2-dimensional, not just us, but how well we handle our environment. And then the third level is leadership. How do we teach others? So why I'm addressing this to start with today, in the world that we're living in, our environment, there's just been an awful lot of external things coming at us, wildfires, COVID-19, racial issues, or just all sorts of stuff coming at us. And what happens when we get in that mindset is it's easy to ruminate. And I call it worry here, but it leads to rumination. And what I wanted to address today is just a couple of things why we can get in this spiral where we can really become reactive instead of staying proactive. And I want to bring back to my other slide here. What this neuroscience, this is actually a very up-to-date study here. It shows that there's a high road and a low road. And I think we've talked about this in a previous session, but I just want to summarize real quick and just remind you guys, the low road in the prefrontal cortex is called the ventral. By definition, the mechanics of the mind, both for people, teams, and organizations, when we're using the ventral, we become reactive. As soon as we are reactive in thoughts, that triggers fight or flight. When fight or flight's triggered, we're tightening up, we're in protect mode, and it creates, fight or flight creates distress. And this is how I would diagnose the human race right now, is we're all fatigued because that distress wears us down. The complete opposite to this, the dorsal, is called deliberate, which to be deliberate, we need to be proactive. So can you write that down straight away? We really want to work hard to be proactive in thoughts and words. Proactive thoughts and words. It's such a massive skill. When we're proactive, that turns the mind on. So I'm going to come back to here. When we're proactive, it turns the mind on. It gives the mind direction. So we're able to move forward in life. And I think that is just so important. When we're reactive, we're spiraling. And there's a gateway between our conscious and our subconscious. All your strengths, all your skills, all your education, all your knowledge is stored here in the subconscious. And if we can't unlock this, we're not performing to our potential. I'm going to bring up a neuroscience study here. I'm going to show you something here a couple of slides earlier, right here. I love this slide. There's one word on this, and can you also write this word down? And I'd love you to write this in bold somewhere, recall. Recall is incredibly important. As I was just saying, we have all of these gifts that we're born. We have gifts that we're born with. We've worked hard to acquire all these skills. A lot of us are going to school and have formal education. Some of us have an awful lot of self-education, which is actually even more important than formal education. But all of that stuff is in your subconscious. If you can't recall it, what's the point? Without recall, there is no application. So going back to my picture here, this is when we have all this intelligence and skills here and we can't get it out, that's called choking. We call it choking in athletics. In music, it's called a memory slip. But my question is to all of us, how often are we choking at some level, not maximizing our potential? That's why we're going to talk about confidence today, because confidence is one of the most important mental skills to help us unlock our potential. Again, it just blows me away. I'm going to talk about myself for a minute. I grew up in Australia. I'm from a tennis family. My dad was this great tennis player. My uncle was actually was responsible for all of junior tennis in Australia at one point. I used to get up in the mornings while everyone else is still sleeping and go for runs in the pitch black. I'd do 1,000 skips before I'd leave for school, trying to improve my footwork. And I'd go to school, get all my homework done at lunch and recess so that I could go and train about 3-4 hours in the evening. I did this for years. I turned pro at 17. I did all of this work to train myself to be high performing in the subconscious. But then I'd turn up for matches and I'd start to worry about I'd make a mistake or focusing on what could go wrong. And I'd start to spiral, go into fight or flight, and I couldn't remember my skills. That's called choking. I used to choke. Now, granted, there was different levels of choking. Sometimes I was choking horribly. Other times it was just a little bit. I'd have to say I could probably count on only 2 hands how many times I was completely able to unlock all of that and really play my best. At one point, after 3 years on the pro tour, I was struggling. I decided to take a scholarship offer to a school here in Utah. And I played a friend of mine a match, and he beat me 7-6, 7-6, 7-6. So even if you don't understand tennis, that's very close. Well, 6 years later, that guy was the #1 tennis player in the world. It just shows you what we're really capable of if we can unlock our mind and if we can use our mind the right way, just what we're capable of. So what are some of the things that lock our mind? Well, first, I want to talk about fear. The #1 biggest fear for the human race is fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of making mistakes. That's the #1 source of fear of failure. #2 is fear of criticism. What's super interesting in my field, there's research on everything. If I turned my laptop down here, you'd see I've got notes everywhere around on the floor here. There's research on everything, but in fear of failure, there has not been much research. So interesting. It's only now that there's this growing body of research that's starting to come out around fear of failure. It's like failure is like this 200-pound elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about. Even though I know we all worry about it and it's on our mind, but yet we don't like to talk about it with ourselves or others. So we always push it aside. And because the more we push it aside, it's like this mystical thing that is having an impact on our lives and we're not even realizing it's having an impact. And so I just think this is such an interesting thing. So as we're studying this, what the research, here's some things that just blew me away. We're supposed to fail. We are supposed to fail. You need to fail in order to be successful. Actually, there's a chemical in the brain that is when we fail, it actually turns the mind on. We're supposed to fail. The other one is failure is temporary. I love that. I can't tell you how many times when I played horrible tennis and lost a match, I almost felt like it's this permanent scar that I was scarred for life because I had a bad loss, that I was just not good enough or something. No, failure is temporary and we are supposed to fail. Now it's how we deal with it that matters. But just some amazing people: Henry Ford, Albert Einstein, Fred Astaire, Walt Disney, Dr. Seuss. Sylvester Stallone was homeless, living in a New York bus station when he wrote Rocky. I didn't know that until I was studying this. Oprah Winfrey, Bill Gates. I mean, J.K. Rowlings failed at pretty epic levels. She was 28, single mother, homeless, out of a job, and just really struggling. But what it taught her, that she had a strong will. That's what failure taught her. She had a strong will. And so as we go through this, I want to go through this, actually 3 failures. And it's super interesting to go through this to see how we can navigate these failures. So even as I go there, I'm just going to pause, make sure, Terry, are we good? Is there any questions? Or are we good so far?
You know, we did have one question, and someone wants to know, who was the player that beat you, name #1?
Yeah, Patrick Rafter. Patrick Rafter was a friend. We used to travel together. He had ADHD. A funny guy. He actually had a birthmark on his head, and so the hair would grow white. And he had dark hair, but his hair would grow white. Looked like a bird pooped on his head. But yeah, he was a really good guy. Actually, one day I was walking through a store, and it happened to caught my attention that his face was on the front page of a magazine. And so I pick up the magazine, and he had been voted sexiest male alive that year. I'm like, there's no way this kid that used to literally eat the Nutella straight out of the jar with a spoon, and then he'd get the honey and eat honey straight out of the jar. Just a fun guy. But yeah, he ended up becoming number one in the world. So here's the 3 forms of failure. Number one, and this is the bad failure. It's called preventable failure. These are the bad failures. I'm going to read this to you because I think this is interesting. People and organizations don't do what they know they need to. People and organizations don't do what they know they need to. People and organizations don't follow proven methods. And people and organizations are inattentive to detail. Well, why? Why do we not do what we know we need to? I think it's because what we're talking about. When we're so stressed and we're in a reactive state of mind, you literally forget the things you're supposed to do. Not because we're bad people, not necessarily because we're lazy, although granted, it's probably, some people probably are lazy, but I don't think the general body is because they're lazy or they don't want to. It's because when we're reactive, it's clogging off the mind and we don't remember the things we normally do. We just do silly things and we make bad mistakes. The other one that I just want to bring your attention to is the inattentive to detail. I think that is really important information to us. When we start becoming vague in general, and when your people in your teams are vague in general, be aware of that. That's a red flag. When we're vague in general, that's a sign of mental fatigue, and that's a sign that we're checking out, that we're disengaging. Okay? Like if you're looking at the screen for a minute, if you're seeing this from a focus, when I'm being vague in general, my focus is too broad. When my focus is too broad, that's when we get distracted by other things. What's the opposite? So I'm just jumping ahead to something here that I think is amazing. It shows that when people struggle, the reason why we struggle is because we don't rapidly identify and correct the small failures. Most catastrophic things, most accidents are the result of a series of small failures that went unnoticed and unfortunately lined up. I love that. What that tells us, it's the little details that matter. And when we miss the little details or we push them aside or we pretend they're not important, they line up, and that's what creates the big ones. So if the opposite of inattentive to detail is that we got to stay focused on the details. When we stay focused on the details, it's what keeps the mind turned on, and that's what keeps people focused. Staying focused on the small little details is critical. Okay, just pausing for a minute. Everyone good? Okay.
So far.
So this is a skill I want to give you. So we already talked about proactive thoughts and words. That's number 1 skill I've already talked about. Here's number 2 today already. The 3-to-1, which we've talked about before. At the end of each day, after each meeting, when you're doing meetings and holding people accountable, always go with what are the 3 things you're doing well. But make sure it's the little things, not the big things. The magic's in the little things. Get people to focus on the little things they're doing well. Let's look at the preventable failures again. People and organizations don't do what they know they need to. They don't follow proven methods. If you constantly do the 3-to-1 as part of how you manage people and work with people, that's bringing their attention back to what the small things they're doing well. That's going to negate people forgetting what works. And that's going to also help them to pay attention to the little things. So get people to go over all the time the small little details, what they're doing well. I would even suggest in your offices and your teams, every time you see a small little detail a colleague is doing, reinforce it. As you're reinforcing it, I'm going to show you what this means from a neuroscience. And this, I actually had it waiting, but then I bumped it forward. It's called coherence. Coherence is critical. And as it says here, every recall, meaning every time you do the 3 to 1, that's what recall is. Every recall re-embeds the whole map. So every time you or your team or even your kids, every time you get them to go over the things they're doing well, that's increasing recall. And it's re-embedding the whole map in your mind. That's why the 3 to 1 is so important in our lives, because it's always helping us to organize the subconscious. What's the opposite of an organized mind? That's what decoherence is. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. This is what decoherence, this is randomness, a messy mind. This is what coherence looks like. Let's look at what decoherence is. The brain eventually discards the map. That's where you lose recall. That's what choking is. Hence, that's why the 3 to 1 is so important. 3 to 1, but little details. Look for the little things you're doing well, not the big things. Look for the little things. Okay, Terry, I saw some questions there. Do we have a couple of questions or?
We do. So someone would like to know, would you provide an example of what is considered a small little thing that someone is doing very well versus a bigger thing they're doing well?
Yeah, so, okay, so it's cause, when you do the 3 to 1, that's research. Research is cause to the effect. I'm gonna go, I don't know, I'll go volleyball, maybe something we don't know. A couple of weeks ago, I was talking to an athlete and I said, what'd you do well? He said, I served well. That's super vague and macro. What does that mean? And I'm going to ask you guys, is that a cause or an effect? That's an effect. And that's dangerous. That's a result. That's an outcome. The cause, and I said, so wait, that's too vague. What did you do well to serve well? He said, I don't know. This is this generation, millennials. He said, I don't know. I said, well, think. Use your brain, think. Because as you use your brain and think, that's what increases recall. And it took him a minute or maybe 30 seconds. He says, oh, yeah, I made contact at the peak. That's a small detail. It's the small little things we want to reinforce all the time. Every time, you know, with my wife or kids, I'm just always reinforcing the little things. Man, I noticed that you held the door for that lady, or I noticed that you did this. Notice the little things and reinforce the little things. It's the little things. And this is why, okay, I forgot this, and this is critical. The more small the detail, it's like my pen here. The more small the detail, the more real it is. The more real it is, the more you hold it. The more real it is, the more there's something there to trust. The more vague you are, it's like air, there's space there, there's nothing there. So the more small it is, the more real it is, the more authentic it is. Whereas if you just say, you know, Terry, you're awesome. If every day I'm like, Terry, you're awesome, Terry, you're awesome, there's nothing there of substance. But if I'm like, Terry, man, you did a good job bending your elbow on your Diet Coke, the small details are what matters. Does that make sense, Terry?
It does make sense. My question would be, you said when you see people, we're not as interacting with people now. So what do you think are some of the things that we could use with our teams to say you did that well when we haven't seen them for 3 or 4 months. So we haven't even seen them do anything or
good point. Really good point.
Be in their presence.
So Terry brings up a massive point, and this is why we need to be doing this ourselves with ourselves. Because every time you go over the things you're doing well, that's a dopamine hit. And dopamine's a happy chemical in the brain. So Terry, your point is massively valid there. That's why we need to do it all the time, because we're not always getting those dopamine hits of recognition from other people. So we need to do it ourselves as often as possible. And then when we are on Zooms and we do have an opportunity, or we see work coming through emails, to be able to find those opportunities to reinforce those little things. Yeah, it's huge. I mean, going back to when I worked with the Cleveland Cavaliers, when LeBron James came back, our culture was really bad. This is the skill that helped turn it all around, as we just were reinforcing the small details of what we were doing well, because everyone was focused on what we weren't doing, and that's reactive. That creates bad energy. We got to be proactive on the details. Good question, Terry. Other questions? Are we good?
We're good so far. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, we are good. I don't quite understand. I will read over this, and if it turns into a question, I will ask it.
Yeah, I'll keep moving here too, because we got a lot that I want to try and cover, but it's okay as long as this is relevant to us. So here's number 2 that I think is really important. So again, preventable failures are the bad failures. How do we eliminate and get rid of the self-defeating behavior? I would do the 3 to 1, the 3 little details of what you're doing well, one thing you want to do better with yourself and with others when you can. And again, the attention to the details is where the magic is in life. And you think about one more comment on that, big houses, big cars, all that stuff. It's just stuff in the end. Where's really the magic in life? The magic in life is in the small details. It's in the little things that really are the magic. Okay, so here's the next form of failure. It's called complexity-related failures. I think this science came well before COVID, but I think it is addressing COVID big time. It says often unavoidable, inherent uncertainty of the work or life. I think we're seeing that. I cannot tell you how many times people have talked to me about the uncertainty of the future because everything keeps changing with COVID. And people even ask me to talk about why are so many leaders afraid to put plans in place? Well, this is why. Number 1, fear is fear of failure. Number 2 is fear of criticism. So many people are afraid, leaders are afraid to put plans in place because the next thing COVID changes and we can't get flights out of Utah to Chicago anymore. And so when that changes, people are afraid to put a plan in place because if the plan doesn't work, they look bad and they're criticized. Well, so we're going to answer that. So number 1, again, often unavoidable. Well, we can't avoid COVID. Inherent uncertainty of the work and life. That's what COVID's done for us. Unpredictable needs of people, organizations, and life. That's everything we're seeing now. There's so much unpredictability. Problems that we've never seen before. And lastly, damage. Here's the key. I think this is speaking to us right now. I think here's the biggest thing. Damage can be mitigated with contingency plans. Not one plan, having contingencies, not 2, but 3. I'll explain. What we all tend to do, well, first, the lowest functioning people, they don't have plans at all. They're completely random, which is what this is. They're all over the place. That's what that is. Those people that are pretty high functioning, they have a plan. But the problem is with the times we're living in, you put a plan in place, but then COVID changes and it throws everything off. So then people are like, well, that didn't work. And they feel like a failure, or they don't feel the value in putting a plan. Imagine that. Imagine if all of us on this call are on a Black Ops Navy SEALs team and we're flying into northern Afghanistan on some mission and we only have one plan. I mean, what's the chance of us all getting out alive with one plan? But yet that's how most people live their lives, only having one plan. What we need to have is have a contingency. If you have a contingency, when the plan doesn't work, you're able to adapt or pivot and go to the backup plan. And we know the research tells us we can handle 2 to 3 things at one time. So this is why it's good to have a backup for the backup. I think the poster child of leadership right now is the president of New Zealand, the prime minister of New Zealand. This prime minister is amazing. She has been so proactive and so strong and came up with a plan, had a backup plan, and where I got the word pivot was from her. What she's done so well is being able to pivot the plans and not being afraid to put plans in place. She's several times goes, we had this plan, it was working. We've had to pivot and adapt because of this, this, and this. And she's done it again. I don't know if you guys know, New Zealand did not have any COVID cases at all. The whole country didn't have any COVID cases for a longest time. They finally had a couple, but I think the leadership that she's shown has been amazing. She's been fearless and not afraid of criticism, knowing that she has backup plans. I want to show you something else. I know the standard deviation research is not specific to this field of plans, but I'm pretty sure I left this open for us. Yep. But I like this visual image here. And I don't know if you guys remember this from school, but one standard deviation accounts for 68% of the variableness. 68%. To me, the visual aid is you have a plan. You're accounting for 68% of the variables. So there's still 32% chance of failure, but you're accounting for 68%. You have a backup plan. You're now at 95% chance of success, only 5% chance of failure. You have a backup for the backup. you're now at 99.7% chance of success. What I love about this research about fear of failure, there's always going to be a chance of failure. But if we have good plans and we think through our plans, the chance of failure is mitigated significantly. And I like that challenge. One day I was driving up to Idaho with my wife, and we're coming up on a diesel, and the diesel was all over the lane. And she's like, be careful, be careful, be careful. It's all over the lane. I'm like, yeah, I'm good. I got it. She's like, yeah, but what happens if it comes across? And I'm like, because I'm ready. I have this, this, and this. I'll do this. And if this happens, I'll do this. And if this happens, I'll do this. And she's like, I know, but it's just scary. I'm like, yes, but that's life. But if you have a plan, it mitigates the risk. And I don't know I wish I had learned this when I was a kid. I felt like when I was playing tennis, every time that something was wrong, it would throw me off, and I was trying to be perfect all the time. It's not about being perfect. There's always some risk, but I like that. I like that there's some risk. It makes it more fun. It just makes me focus that much harder on my plans. Okay, Terry, what are your thoughts?
Oh my gosh, I have lots of thoughts. But I think that we're all planners in our jobs. And so it's very important, a good idea to have those plans. But something you had said before, you're either in a proactive or a reactive state of mind. I think, unfortunately, we were all for months in a reactive state of mind. So we're into a situation that we were just pushed into the situation of COVID. You had to react. So you did. For me personally, I'm just coming out of that because I was just hoping that this was going to end and it was going to be okay. So I have to learn how to be out of that reactive state of mind. But I think a lot of us are maybe still in it because this changes every day. And that's a hard place to be.
Yep. Absolutely.
State of mind, because we're not used to that.
Yes, and this is what happened again. So this is the environment. So one of the things I like to call what I do is I like to call it mental toughness. Absolutely. And I love the question that was just placed there. What about the battle weariness? Absolutely.
Yes.
But here's what is important for us to understand. And I'm just stating the science. I'm not saying it's easy. When we are reactive, fight or flight's triggered, and that's where the fatigue kicks in. Because when you're in fight or flight, you're burning energy and you're fatiguing the mind. So what choice do we have during COVID that's going on 7 months now? What choice do we have? I can't tell you how many times I've been so busy. I was already had a full schedule before this. And since this, everyone's wanting mental strength. And so I've been doing, it's never ending. In July is when the university's usually off. Like most of the coaches took a break because they had to cancel their seasons. For me, I didn't. I was more busy than ever. July comes around, is usually I have that month off. And all the coaches are turning up back on campus. And they're like, hey, Craig, we're ready to go. We had our break, ready to go. I'm like, what? You guys are ready to go? I haven't had any break at all. I've been doing all the work while you guys have been gone. I don't have a break. And I was getting some migraines during that month because I was just so worn out and so annoyed at some of these coaches that took a vacation while I was working with their athletes the whole time they're gone. So I was kind of in a ticked off state of mind. And I realized I'm being reactive. I was reacting to them, which is only fatiguing me even more. And what I realized is I have no choice right now if I want to handle this. I've got to be tough and stay proactive. I'll get my break in January. I'm just going to have to stay proactive and stay focused because as soon as you go reactive, you're burning energy. Now I just want to hit this again. Where there is a moment when there's external things coming at us, there's a brief moment where you have a choice whether you're going to go reactive or proactive. As soon as we go reactive, we are burning energy. And so many of my clients have killed it during COVID because we've worked so hard to stay proactive. But I admit too, Terry, nearly all my clients are fatigued right about now. And so I'm calling it the reset. All my coaching sessions lately about, we got to reset. Because we haven't been able to take those breaks. We haven't been able to have those vacations and we're struggling a little bit there. And so it's time just to that doesn't mean you're depressed or maybe you are a bit depressed, but that doesn't mean it's clinical. It's just time for us to reset again and get us back on the proactive so that we're always moving forward as best as we can. And we will get through this if we do it. But yeah, absolutely. The fatigue is there. We've got to be aware of two things when we're managing people. Productivity, we still got to produce, but we got to be aware of their emotional intelligence and emotional health, which is energy. We got to keep trying to manage their energy as best as possible, which really is staying proactive, but finding speed. So in my journal today, I have in my journal the things I stay, every day I have a plan to stay focused on certain things. And today mine is, again, staying aware of myself. So I'm being myself so I don't lose my identity. Staying proactive in thoughts and words, as I encourage you to do, because I think it's critical at this time. And then choosing my words carefully, because I'm doing 3 speaking engagements today. But a skill I just had 2 days ago was relax whenever possible. This is the smallest moments we have to relax. We've got to be deliberate about relaxing. What is relaxing really? Relaxing is slowing down. When you slow down, that's how we can refuel. We've got to stay proactive though, because you go reactive, you're going to burn the energy. I personally like to go for a walk every single day, although our air quality is not good here right now with the fires from California is now hitting us. I still like to try and go for a walk every day just to clear the mind as best as possible. Now, I know that's not the answer you want to hear. And I know I've done this coaching session a lot during COVID and had some people like, yeah, but I'm not being able to go and see my daughter in France and see my grandchild, and life stinks. And my response is yes, but people have lost their jobs and people are out of work. We've got to stay proactive here and can't let ourselves go in the spiral of what's wrong, because that's not helping us or anyone else. And so guys, again, this is my job. I just want to let you guys know, when you are reactive and you trigger fight or flight, you're creating distress. And when you create distress, it's fatiguing you. And you're fatiguing those people around you, because that energy is not only impacting you, that energy is impacting everyone around you. So be careful of that. I was actually up in Idaho. We have a little cabin up there when I was having the migraines, and I'm like, I'm just exhausted and I'm worn out. That's why we went up there for a couple of days over the weekend. But it hit me. But what impact am I having, not just on me, but my own wife? From that moment, I've had in my journal every single day to be proactive in thoughts and words, not just my own thoughts, but my words with other people. It completely changed. Not that anything was wrong in our marriage, but I just didn't realize the impact I was having on those around me. It completely changed the energy. And it's hard work. There's been several days where I'm fatigued and tired, and I'm like, oh, I'm just tired. I almost feel entitled to be upset today. But and you've got to stop your thoughts there and go, no, tough it out, stay proactive, get through this. Terry, what do you think?
I think that's wonderful. I'm going to tell you, I wanted you to say to me, or to all of us, here's
okay, right?
something you can do, or go on Amazon and buy this, and this is going to make you proactive and positive. And, and really what you told us all is we have to dig deep inside ourselves, and it is relax, slow down, walk, work out. I mean, that might be meditation, whatever it is, you have to find it deep in yourself. So for me, you've validated, I've started to try meditating apps, just to get 10 minutes of meditation, try to clear my brain in the morning. But I really wanted it to be just go buy these vitamins and you're going to feel.
Yeah, I love it, Terry. See, it's so important at this time. The truth is we do need to tough it out. We need to dig deep down inside of us. And here's the truth, guys, not just for you, but those that you may come in contact about this. We can do this. We can get through this. We are tough. We're tougher than we realize. And we're not going to let COVID beat us. We're going to get through this. And we're going to come through this stronger than ever. We can do this. And it's amazing what happens if you keep your mind proactive. I got so many cool stories and so many success stories of what's happened with people that are keeping their mind proactive, their relationships with their spouses, because divorce rates at an all-time high. That's because we're reacting to each other and we're just creating bad energy. If we stay proactive, we can get through this. And not only can we get through this, we can actually come out of this really doing well if we keep our minds in a good place. So absolutely, that's what I'm saying. Now, I was asked to do some speaking engagements, even in a church setting. And that's where the lady was furious with me, because she was saying, I can't go and visit my daughter and I can't go and see my grandchild. How can you tell us to be proactive when we're dealing with so much turmoil? And I'm thinking, you've got to be kidding me. That is nothing compared to what other people are dealing with. suck it up, deal with it, move on. And she did not like me saying that because it was a church setting. She wanted me to do the whole fluffy sugar and spice stuff. And I'm like, no, tough it out. We've got to get through this.
Exactly. I do have a couple questions. When is Dr. Manning's third book, when will it be available for purchase? I did not do that to try to sell your book. That it was not planted.
I actually am working on it. I'm getting about 47 pages into it. So I'm working hard on it because, yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on. Okay, guys, we've got to get into...
we have one more question, Dr. Manning. How do you turn your brain off while sleeping? Work comes into the subconscious. I oversee property managers in the Chicago area. We continue to deal with pandemic and new great social unrest. How can we turn the brain off?
Yes, such a good question. It's because around 3 or 4 in the morning is when your conscious mind is the most asleep. And that's when your subconscious, all of the stuff you dealt with today is wanting your attention. So that's when you find yourself waking up at 2, 3, or 4 is because that subconscious is wanting attention. Here's how you really relax. You can't turn your conscious mind off. This cannot be turned off. It's always in motion. It's a reverberating nerve. What it does is we're always thinking. What we need to do is, and I'm role modeling it now, is you've got to slow down. Just making sure, because I think it was unstable there for a minute, the internet. You've got to slow down. You can't stop thinking, but you can slow down. So that's why I like going for walks. And I'm trying to learn from other smart people, but there's all this research showing that Immanuel Kant, Albert Einstein, all these amazing people throughout the history of the human race that just did these amazing things. The one common denominator, they'd all go for walks every day. Some of them would go for walks like a couple of hours, which I can't afford that sort of time, but we all go for walks. But one of the things walking does is it slows your mind down. And so that's how you relax. You got to slow your breathing. That's what meditation does. It slows your breathing. Slow your breathing, talk slow, walk slow. Half an hour before you go to bed, slow down. Walk slow, talk slow, try to think slow. Put on a movie you already know. I throw on Harry Potter for my wife. She's out like that if I put Harry Potter on. Because she's seen it a million times and it's soothing to her and it just slows her mind down. That's really the key to relaxing, is slowing it down. Also, by the way, that's when you get migraines, those of you that are migraine sufferers. Our mind's spinning so fast that there's not enough oxygen getting to the brain. So after the session, because I'm going fast in our session, I need time to slow down and refuel after this session. Slowing down. It sounds so simple, but yet it's a hard skill to get good at. All right, guys, I know we're only got 20 minutes here, but I still feel like what we talked about was really relevant and important. I want to show you confidence. What I'm actually going to do here, I'm going to show you that the research shows it's the most critical psychological characteristic influencing human performance. It's the most consistent. Why? Well, confidence is the skill that helps you to take more control of your conscious mind so that you are in control of the speed, to what I just talked about, or just in control of your thoughts in general. So many people are not in control of their thoughts, and that's called ants. Highly sophisticated, complicated word, ants, A-N-T-S. Can you write that down, guys? A-N-T-S. ANT stands for automatic negative thoughts. Those automatic negative thoughts are not your thoughts. Don't think just because you have thoughts pop in your mind, those are yours. Those are called ants. Squash those thoughts and replace them with your own thoughts. You own this space. So coming back to what you're just saying there, Terry, we need to own this space and not let everyone else's thoughts occupy that space. Well, how do we do it? That's what confidence is. What I'm actually going to show you here today, guys, I'm going to jump through this a little quick because we don't have as much time, but I'm going to show you what confidence is. But I've got a slide. I do all these trainings all the time. This is my favorite one. There's something I learned a long time ago, because as the research just talks about, confidence is number one. It's the most important. I'm going to show you what confidence is. Then I'm going to show you my favorite, it's kind of my secret slide that I don't usually show, but I just keep it in my back pocket when I need to, when I want something special. I'm going to show you what it is here in a minute. Confidence is not passivity. Being passive, if you're taking notes, is a lose-win. Passive is, if you're just looking at the screen, if I'm passive, I'm putting myself beneath people. I stink, you're great. That's what passive is. Again, I'm going to move through this pretty quick. You've probably heard this before. But passive is I'm putting myself down. Why do passive people do this? Because they're victims. They want other people to come and save them. They want others to tell them what to do. They want others to ask them out on dates. They want others to notice how awesome they are. They want others to notice how great they are and give them a pay rise. They're always waiting. Passive people are always waiting in life. They're reactive, always waiting. On the complete opposite end of the scale, arrogance. Arrogance is false confidence. Arrogance, again, if you're looking at this picture, arrogant people always pull people beneath them to make themselves feel better. Passive people put themselves beneath people to get people to basically pick them up. They're almost manipulating people to pick them up and tell them they're great. Arrogance put people beneath them in order to try and make them feel good. Both of these are rooted in the comparison with others. Arrogant people don't want to work, so it's a lose for them and it's a lose for others. It's a you stink mentality. These people are dangerous. They're a cancer and they can undermine your teams. The good thing is there's not that many arrogant people in the world, not at high levels of performance, because these people don't do it, so they weed themselves out in athletics and music and academia. You sometimes see arrogance in business because they are inherited some position of leadership by mom or dad or something like that. But most of the time, arrogant people weed themselves out because they're not taking action. Aggression is completely different than arrogance. If I'm here, an aggressive person always wants to be better. Aggressive people always want to be first. They always want to be right. They always want to win. They always want to send the last emoji. They always walk half a step ahead of you. They always talk just a little bit louder. They always are a little bit ahead of you at the stoplight. One time, one of my friends that I love to death lives near where I live. He's a very aggressive human being. I pulled up at the light next to him one day and I said, Mackenzie, my wife, I said, watch this. I'm going to mess with him. And so I pull up my car a little bit ahead of him. So he has to sneak forward. Didn't know it was me. By the time I was done, he was halfway into the intersection. Because aggressive people are predominantly emotional. They let their emotions dictate things and they want to be the best. The thing that's interesting about aggressive people is they produce. Aggressive people get things done. A lot of my closest friends are aggressive people. They get things done. It's a win-lose mentality. If you're not tough enough, they're going to walk all over the top of you. And they don't even notice it because they're too busy taking care of the things they need to take care of. Aggressive people produce, guys. So those of you on the call that are passive, that always feel like the aggressive people are the big bad bullies. Passive, those of us that tend to be passive, I'm going to jump ahead here. We need to be more assertive. The ultimate confidence is assertive. It's a win-win. Aggression is a win-lose. Assertive is the only one of the four mindsets that there's no comparison with other people. The competition is with ourselves, creating win-wins. Of the four mindsets, we all get into all four of them at different stages in our lives and different stages even in a given day. But we also all predominantly have a default setting. I think passiveness was a big part of my life for a long time, and I've learned to be pretty darn assertive these days. Assertiveness is critical to be able to unlock the potential we talked about. When we're assertive, we are owning this space. And when we're assertive, it unlocks this gateway and lets all of our knowledge and experience out. When we're passive, passive people are not occupying the space. They're too soft with themselves. And as they're soft, it allows everything else to get in, all the external noise. Also, what passive people do is it leads to overthinking things to try and compensate for their lack of ability to own the space. Aggressive people are very emotional and they occupy the space sometimes with just raw energy. Assertive people occupy the space, and this is the language. They're very firm and steadfast in their language. They have very firm, balanced tone. When you talk to yourself with that strong tone, you own the space. As you own the space, you're in control. Let's give you some examples. A couple of years ago, we're getting some road work done down at the university road work. I come out of my house and I was thinking, okay, should I take the truck today or should I take the Subaru? Maybe I'll take the truck. No, maybe I'll take the Subaru. No, I'll take the truck because they're doing some construction. But the Subaru is more fun. I was like, Craig, take the bloody truck. And as soon as I talked to myself in that way, I just turned and walked towards the truck. No more thought. That's what assertiveness is. When we're assertive, we're thinking, we're articulate, and we've organized thoughts, but we're not overthinking. We're in control of our communication to the central nervous system. The central nervous system does everything that we do. That's why our communication to the central nervous system is so important, to be clear and concise. I'll even go so far as, if I'm a coach, I've even worked with the football coaches on this. When you train your athletes and they're conditioned in the subconscious to execute certain skills, you could technically be on the sideline and be assertive enough to communicate the action of what the proactive action you want. And the behavior will happen immediately because it's engaging the central nervous system of other people are hearing those cues, and the behavior will respond that way. Confidence is assertive. It's a balance. It's creating win-wins. It's so that you're occupying the space. There's space here in your head, and we need to own the space. So we're not letting COVID, we're not letting the fires, we're not letting the racial injustice and all of those things get in our heads and impact us, so that we're strong of mind. So we're in control of our own thoughts. I just want to go one step further here. I know my goal is to get to 10 minutes too before I hit the last slide. There's not only is there space, this is a really important part. I know we're 50 minutes in, if you can hang in there, guys. Not only is there space in your own mind that you want to occupy and be in control over. Control is at the root of every psychological issue. This is how you take control. There's also space between people. So if I slide back a little bit in my chair here, there's space between me and you. 50% of that space is technically mine, 50% is technically yours. If I'm passive and I only occupy 25 or 30% of the space, every living organism, every human being, every animal, every plant will take advantage of you if you don't own the space. Unless you're trained in this, if you're too passive and you don't occupy your space, horses, dogs will occupy the space and take advantage of you. It's important for us, as those of us that are passive, to occupy our space, to be firm and strong in our space, good tone of voice, and strong posture and body language. Now, those of you that tend to be aggressive, now those people out there, as I'm saying this, if you come across somebody that's passive, don't take advantage of them. Just because you can doesn't mean it's right. The best leaders are assertive. They only ever occupy 50%, and they invite others to meet them halfway. Hence, that's why assertive leaders get the most out of their people. That's why assertive leaders are the best coaches, the best managers, the best leaders, because they encourage others to let all of their talent, skills, and intelligence out. They don't impose on them. They occupy 50% and invite them to meet them halfway. They don't cripple them and do it for them. They don't create codependency. We're trying to create independence. That's what the best leaders do. They're assertive. Now that we're trained in this, hopefully you guys can see that. Be assertive with yourself. Work hard to find the win-wins. Work hard to find the balance in your relationships with other people. Work hard to find that middle ground. It's not easy, and it's a constant moving target. And this is why this skill set's so elusive. I just talked about the 4 mindsets. Assertive If you can fill your team with assertive people, that is ideal. The problem is it's hard to find them because there simply isn't that many assertive people in the world. The predominant mindset of the world is passiveness. At the higher levels of performance, the predominant mindset is aggression. If you can fill your team with assertive, you're going to crush it. And so if you can build this, you guys are you're going to do well. Okay, Terry, thoughts, questions?
Oh my gosh, I have so many. No, but we're going to open up the floor to other people sharing their thoughts. Feel free to put it in the chat. I don't know if people can take themselves off of mute and ask a question. If you can't, do that. Dr. Manning's opening up for questions. I do while we're waiting for other people, but feel free to chime in, but I will ask a question. So when you described aggressive, and I don't need anybody to pipe in on this that knows me, I felt like some of my actions might be aggressive, but I want them to be assertive. So I feel like there's a fine line between that.
Absolutely, yes.
And I don't want to cross that line. I want to keep it positive, so I want to stay on the assertive side. How do you do that? Monitor yourself to stay, or if you are aggressive, how do you turn that into assertiveness rather than, you know, how do you move to the positive side? I feel, you know.
Yeah, no, great. It's a good question. And like you said, it's a balance. How I draw this always, I draw passive down the bottom, arrogance at the top because they're two extremes, and then assertive and aggressive are in the middle. Those are the better mindsets because both assertive and aggressive people produce and get things done. And there is a balance between the two though, like you said, and we always got to monitor that balance. The difference is aggressive people, it's a little bit too much of emotion and sometimes when we're aggressive, it's only what's in our best interest, and we're not being aware of making it a win for others. And so I like the example of we occupy too much of the space sometimes, and we got to make sure we're giving others the opportunity to have that second win. But first, always, and I love this question, Terry, that first win should always be ours because that's the only person we have control over is us. So first, make sure it's a win for you first. Then second, how do you make it a win for others? And that's the skill set, is constantly trying to make win-wins and giving other people the space. Even when we talk, try to occupy 50% of the conversation and let the other person occupy 50%. And just constantly trying to find those win-wins and balances. Even your tone, sometimes when our tone gets too high, we just got to bring it down a little bit so we're not being overly aggressive in our imposing on others. But it's a balance, and that's the art form. Terry?
Thank you. We have someone ask, could you give an example of a win-win? I think you just kind of covered that, but if you have something more to say about that.
Yeah, just, I mean, example right now, this speaking engagement, I've got a lot on my plate. I've got a lot of clients. And when you, Terry, reached out to ask, my first thought is, okay, does this work for me? Can I fit it in my schedule? Is this worth it for me? The time, the money, is it all worth it? I love doing it. I love teaching. Is this a win for me? I'm like, here's my thoughts. I love it. I had a great experience with you guys last time. It's over Zoom. This is going to be fun. This is a win for me. Okay, now how do I make it a win for you? So then I get back to you. If we could do it on this day or this day at a certain time. Remember when you went backwards and forwards on the right timing even? Remember that? Because we're taking into consider Arizona. Right, Terry?
Yes, yes.
There's the win for Terry, and then a win for Terry and her the different branches involved. And you were thinking about, okay, this works for Chicago, but what about Arizona and all these others as well? That was totally a win-win. Trying to make it work for everyone. And when you do that, man, that's what brings people together. So I thought that was a good example there. Yeah, there's so many examples. Driving, I think, is the ultimate example. When you drive anywhere and you come up behind people and you sit too close, that is aggression. You sit too far behind, that's passive. So many times I'm in a car with somebody that's sitting way behind somebody that's driving slow, and they're getting annoyed and mad and complaining. This is what we always do when we're in a passive mindset. We're whining and complaining in our head, or whining and complaining to anyone that was willing to listen about the person in front of us that's not driving fast enough. Yeah, but you're sitting too far behind. What are you communicating? When you sit too far behind, you're communicating, keep driving like an idiot because I don't care. That's what you're communicating when you sit too far behind. The skill set is assertive is coming up the right distance, not too close that you're communicating aggression, but communicating enough that you want to move faster and trying to create win-wins. I mean, this whole thing is going on the whole time. Every grocery store, every text, every email, every time you're driving, this whole passive, aggressive, assertive is going on in every area of our life. Every area, every moment of the day, this is going on all the time. I know I'm seeing a bunch of questions come up there, Terry, if we got some questions.
Yep. So someone wants to know examples of ants, which were the automatic negative thoughts. How do you squash them?
Yeah. Okay, good. So a thought pops in my head of, I don't know, it could be anything. I don't want to do this, or I don't want this to happen. You just straight away go, stop, no, because no or stop is proactive. The word don't is reactive. Stop, no, this, and then so you have thoughts in your mind you don't want. You first say stop and no. And that just in a sense, you clean out whatever thoughts there and you replace back the thoughts in your mind that you want to have. I'm trying to give an example. I want to get back. Go for it.
Actually, someone also said, can you give us some examples of progressive thinking, which I think you are giving us now. Do I understand correctly that it's a constant self-monitoring of your thoughts and actions?
Always being self-aware. And the reason why awareness is so big, I'm going to show you here. The opposite of fight or flight is awareness. This warning system is a part of the prefrontal cortex that's engaged when we're proactive or deliberate. Whenever we're proactive or deliberate, it engages the warning system. A warning system is awareness. Self-awareness is such an important skill. If you're not self-aware, you're not in control of your thoughts and your behavior. Self-awareness is where it all begins. It's called metacognition. If you're not self-aware, that means you have blind spots. Blind spots is a nice way of saying you are ignorant. And ignorance is at the root of all of our problems. And I think you would all agree with that. When you're dealing with ignorant people, that is the root of all problems. Self-awareness is critical. So what we need to do as we're self-aware, we can hear our self-talk being reactive. What does that sound like? I don't want to be late. Can you hear those words? Those words are actions, actionable negative words. I don't want to be late is reactive. What's the opposite? I want to be on time. Instead of saying, I don't want to get sick, say to yourself, I'm going to be healthy, or I need to drink water to be healthy. Instead of saying, don't hit it in the water, say, I'm going to hit it down the fairway. Instead of saying, COVID is wearing me down, say to yourself, I'm going to get through COVID, but I need to find a time to have a break. I want to get back up to the cabin. So when am I going to get up there? Not, I can't get up to the cabin. I want to get up to the cabin. When am I going to get up there? Probably next Friday, I'll get up to the cabin for 3 days. You always want to train your mind to talk in proactive, not reactive, because proactive is real. It's not fake. Here's something else that hit me. I know only got 1 minute here, but here's an example here. I have a friend who's a defense attorney. He's a trial defense attorney in Southern California. He got his law degree from Stanford. Not that that matters, but he's well educated. What he realized, everything he learned as a trial attorney was what not to do. My client didn't do this. My client didn't do that. My client didn't do this. That's all reactive. So think about this minute when you're reactive. When you're always talking about what you didn't do, you're building defenses, you're building a wall. But what did you do? None of us know. All we know is what you didn't do, which here's the key. When you are reactive, you don't trust yourself. And others don't trust you when you're reactive because there's nothing there of substance. Think about North Korea. They build a wall, literally a physical wall. No one knows what's going on in North Korea. That's why we don't trust them. My client said instead what he did is he started with proactive. This is what my client did do. My client did this. My client did this. My client did this. Yes, my client did shoot that person because he was in self-defense. Has not lost a case in 5 years. When you're proactive, you're stating facts a lot of the time. This is what I did do, and this is what I'll do better. And it's tangible and real, like the example. The more proactive you are, the more real it is, and that's what builds trust, not just in yourself, but in others. And so the combination of proactivity with assertiveness, that's a powerful way of navigating people.
So Dr. Manning, we had one comment that says, that's a similar message I use with my kids. Instead of stop running in the house, I've learned to say walk in the house.
Great.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And if I could be so bold, my takeaway is that I will share, you said before, own your space. And you were talking about the physical space between two people. But I really think what I'm going to take away is if you start to own your space physically, I believe that will pour over mentally. Or if you own your space mentally and emotionally, that will pour over physically. So choose any one of those, own your space, and I think that will really, that's my takeaway today. And I thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. Appreciate it. Thanks. Appreciate you guys having me on. I love you guys are fun. And for me, again, so just as you shared your takeaway, Terry, to me, the power of being proactive really helps you to come alive because you're taking action, moving forward instead of spiraling. And then when you're assertive on top of it, you're proactive and you're asserting yourself and moving forward. And you're not sitting back waiting for life to happen. You don't need life to happen. You're engaging in life all the time. It makes life fun and it feels like you come alive and you're just engaging in things. And I think that's what makes life enjoyable and worthwhile. So anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, we did ask, was this recorded? And will we be able to get a recording of it?
Yes, it is. Oh,
okay.
Man. It's a good thing it was recording because I forgot. So yes, it's recording right here. I'll send it to you right away. So
okay, fantastic. We'll share it with everyone that was on this call. And we got another thank you so much. This is such a great insight on so many levels. So lots of great feedback. And we thank you again for being with us. And we hope we will see you again.
Great. Thanks. Appreciate it, Terry. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
See ya.